With the wealth came newfound respect from the Shah's Western allies.
The special jet from London brought the Chancellor and Mr. Walker direct to St. Moritz. The two ministers have come here to jet-set Switzerland to see the Shah of Persia about oil for Britain. The Shah's here for a month, and he consented to break his annual winter holiday to see them. Mr. Barber apparently batted first, having half an hour with the Shah, discussing mainly very long-range ideas. He wants to persuade the Shah to reinvest some of his enormous oil profits through the London money markets.
We did cover the whole range of Anglo-Iranian relations, and particularly matters concerning economic relations. And what I think really did impress me was not only his grasp of the matters we were discussing, but also his very high regard for the United Kingdom.
As the money rolled in, the Shah continued to pursue his lifelong ambition of turning Iran into a military superpower. This suited the United States. President Nixon had already adopted his Nixon doctrine of allowing other nations to assume greater responsibilities for their own defense. The security of the Persian Gulf was readily delegated to the Shah.
What is your ambition? To be the fourth largest military power in the world?
Probably the best, non-atomic.
Today, Iran's armed forces possess simply the best military equipment in the world, no matter where it's made. This combined artillery battalion is made up both of 175mm guns from America and 130s from Russia, the ones the North Vietnamese used to such effect. It's a powerful combination.
From where the Shah sat, Iran's impressive economic growth and political stability offered lessons for other countries.
You will have to change, because if you don't change, I don't know what is going to happen to you in the future.
What do you think will happen?
Go back to the caves?
You think that's our fate?
If it continues really in this way, it might take some time, but you are going to go down and down. You can't move up.
Because of our lack of discipline, you think?
Because of your lack of discipline. This is the best word that could be used.
قدرت دفاعی برای ایران لازم بود، ولی پنجمین ارتش جهان این یک پایه، یک زیرساخت، یک پی اقتصادی، صنعتی و فرهنگی میخواد که ایران تا 20 سال بعدش هم نمیتونست پیدا بکنه. اینها رو دیگه متوجه نشد. شاه به عمق هیچ موضوعی در زندگیش نرفت. نمیتوانست. ذهنش توانایی رفتن به عمق نداشت.
As Commander-in-Chief, why is it that you need a fighter-bomber force of 300 planes? Why do you need 700 helicopters, 1,700 tanks? Where exactly is the threat that demands a war machine of this size?
Well, I have been asked about the same question in 2 or 3 places. My invariable answer from now on will be, it's as if you ask the same question to the British or the French. We are assuming such a position, and even eventually more even than you in Europe, because of the vacuum that there is around us. There is nothing.
The immediate threat was still Iraq. Although Iran and Iraq signed an accord respecting each other's borders in 1975, the Shah never believed Saddam would honor it. He spoke frankly to the Israeli ambassador.
He laughed. He said, this agreement I was referring to is not worth the paper it was signed on. And he felt, the Shah at the time felt, that he has no doubt that when the time came, Iran is going to be attacked by Iraq. And I have to have a strong and modern army.
While the Shah focused on his foreign enemies, Savak, his intelligence agency, was losing sight of the real threat closer to home. The oil wealth had mainly benefited a small group close to the Shah. The gap between rich and poor was becoming a gulf. In Najaf, Ayatollah Khomeini sharpened his pen.
The Shah has been talking about progress for more than 10 years, but the majority of people are engulfed in poverty and misery. He has beautified Tehran on the surface and has built multi-story buildings for himself and his cronies. But in villages where the majority of people live, they don't even have the most basic standard of living.
Foreign intelligence organizations were seemingly oblivious to the grievances building up within Iran. The CIA was much more interested in what was going on in its northern neighbor, the Soviet Union.
The reading from Washington was that the Shah was completely in control, that there was no great threat to his rule, and we didn't have to pay much attention to that. And I realize for Iranians, this is impossible to believe. I mean, that the Americans were not worried about all of the little things that were going on inside Iran. For the most part, we really were not interested at all. Iran was a base from which we could watch a lot of other things going on, but it was not, we were not particularly interested in the domestic operations in Iran itself.
The world was, though, keenly interested in the price of oil. The Shah resisted all efforts to get him to bring down the price. Instead, he urged the West to cut back on its consumption, a message well ahead of its time.
We have a very nasty climate. Why do you say that we should suffer this kind of discomfort and this kind of...
Well, you call that discomfort, but do you know that you can get 70,000 derivatives from oil? Is it right to waste it? What couldn't we do with those 70,000 derivatives? Your fathers and forefathers lived, and probably they were as strong as you are, and their houses were either heated with coal or not heated at all. But in any way, you are just wasting this precious stuff.
The dollar, in particular, was hit hard by the high price of oil. Yet the Shah continued to enjoy Nixon's support.
The American government tried to get him to moderate the price of oil following the big increase in 1973. And we never succeeded in gaining any moderation on that score at all.
Then, in 1975, the tide began to turn.
My name is Jimmy Carter, and I'm running for president.
Presidential candidate Jimmy Carter criticized the Nixon administration for ignoring human rights abuses and selling weapons to dictatorships. Iran was one of those he singled out.
Iran is going to get 80 F-14s before we even meet our own Air Force orders for F-14s. And the shipment of Spruance-class destroyers to Iran are much more highly sophisticated than the Spruance-class destroyers that are presently being delivered to our own Navy. This is ridiculous, and it ought to be changed.
After he became president, he realized fairly quickly that the United States relied on the Shah, that we had tremendous political, military, and economic relations with Iran. What it did do, however, is that it opened up a lot of expression in Iran. Because for the first time, Iranian dissidents, people who were opposed to the Shah, thought that they had an ally in Washington, and they were speaking far more freely.
In 1976, the CIA released a psychological profile of the Shah in which he was described as a brilliant but dangerous megalomaniac who was likely to pursue his own aims in disregard to the interests of the United States.
ذهنیت ما درست یا غلط این بود که آمریکا حامی شاهه. یعنی اون به واسطه این حمایت که این قدرت از خودش نشون میده. حالا شما ببینید یه رئیس جمهوری اومده که اولین شعارش علیه یا یه شعار مهمش یه جوریه که میشه علیه این رژیم اونو تفسیر کرد. اصلا خود این روحیه بخش میشه که آقا پشت طرف داره چی میشه؟ خالی میشه.
Accepting the new reality, the Shah's government gave in to American demands for more freedom of expression and respect for human rights. But democracy was still a step too far.
Have come here to jet-set Switzerland to see the Shah of Persia about oil for Britain. The Shah's here for a month, and he consented to break his annual winter holiday to see them. Mr. Barber apparently...
A whole range of Anglo-Iranian relations, and particularly matters concerning economic relations. And what I think really did impress me was not only his grasp of the matters we were discussing.
He batted first, having half an hour with the Shah, discussing mainly very long-range ideas. He wants to persuade the Shah to reinvest some of his enormous oil profits through the London money markets.
We did cover but also his very high regard for the United Kingdom.
As the money rolled in, the Shah continued to pursue his lifelong... With the wealth came newfound respect from the Shah's Western allies.
The special jet from London brought the Chancellor and Mr. Walker direct to St. Moritz. The two ministers